Have you ever prayed for something so deeply, so desperately, that it consumed your heart? Maybe it was for healing from an illness, for a broken relationship to be restored, or for a door of opportunity to finally open. You poured out your heart in tears, but the silence afterward felt unbearable. You asked yourself, does God hear me? Does he see my pain? Waiting is one of the hardest parts of faith. It's not just the passing of time, it's the ache of longing, the disappointment of unmet hopes, and the loneliness of believing that no one understands. When prayers seem unanswered, doubts creep in. You begin to wonder if God has forgotten you or if your cries are too small to matter. Sometimes the waiting feels even harder because of the voices around us. Friends might say, just move on, as if it were that simple. Others might compare their lives to yours, unintentionally reminding you of what you still don't have. And deep inside, your own heart whispers, maybe this is never going to change. Those whispers can turn into heavy chains, making you feel stuck in your pain. Pain can also be invisible to others. On the outside, you might look fine. You still go to work, smile at friends, and go through the motions of life. But inside, your heart feels heavy. The longing that no one else sees weighs on you every single day. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones that happen in silence, with no one there to witness your tears. If you've ever cried quietly in the night, if you've ever whispered a prayer that felt like it went unanswered, then you know this struggle. The silence of waiting can feel louder than any words of comfort. You may have thought, why does God bless others but not me? What's wrong with me? Has he forgotten my name? But here's the truth, you are not alone. The Bible tells the story of many who waited, who longed, who felt forgotten. Among them is a woman named Hannah. She knew what it meant to cry out in deep pain. She knew the shame of waiting, the sting of unanswered prayers, and the loneliness of feeling misunderstood. Year after year, she carried the weight of longing, yet her story doesn't stop in pain. It shows us something greater, that even in the deepest sorrow, God hears. He is not deaf to your cries, nor blind to your tears. Hannah's journey begins in heartbreak, but it does not end there, and her faith gives us hope for our own journeys today. Hannah's story begins in a time of personal heartbreak. She was married to a man named Elkanah who loved her deeply. Yet, despite his love, Hannah carried a sorrow she could not escape. She had no children. In her culture, this was not only a personal disappointment, but also a source of shame. Motherhood was considered a woman's honor, and without it, Hannah felt incomplete and rejected. To make matters worse, Elkanah had another wife, Peninnah, who did have children. Year after year, Peninnah would provoke Hannah, mocking her for what she lacked. Imagine the sting of those words. Every celebration, every meal, every moment surrounded by children reminded Hannah of her empty arms. Her pain was not just silent, it was pressed upon her, again and again until it felt unbearable. Yet Hannah did not give up. Year after year, Elkanah would take his family to the temple at Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord. It was in this place of worship that Hannah poured out her deepest pain. She went to the temple and prayed with such intensity that she wept bitterly. Her lips moved silently as she cried out to God, making a vow, Lord Almighty, if you will look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. This was not a casual prayer. It was the cry of a broken heart. Hannah wasn't bargaining with God, she was surrendering. She acknowledged that the gift of a child would come only from God, and she promised to dedicate that child back to him. Her pain turned into an offering of faith. As she prayed, the priest Eli noticed her. At first he misunderstood her, thinking she was drunk because her lips were moving, but no words came out. But when Hannah explained, Eli responded with words of blessing, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. Something shifted in Hannah's heart. The Bible says that after this encounter, she left the temple, ate, and her face was no longer downcast. Notice her circumstances had not yet changed. She was still childless at that moment. But something inside her changed. She trusted that God had heard her. In time, God answered Hannah's prayer. She conceived and gave birth to a son, Samuel, whose name means heard by God. True to her vow, Hannah dedicated Samuel to the Lord, and he grew up to become one of Israel's greatest prophets, a leader who anointed kings and guided the nation. Hannah's story is not just about receiving what she asked for. It is about the God who listens, the God who remembers, and the God who turns pain into purpose. Hannah's story teaches us something powerful. God hears, even when it feels like silence surrounds us. For years she prayed, wept, and waited. It seemed like nothing changed. People mocked her, circumstances discouraged her, and hope felt far away. But the turning point came not when her circumstances shifted, but when her heart rested in God's promise that He had not forgotten her. This truth matters for us today, because many of us know the ache of waiting. You may be waiting for healing in your body, waiting for a door of opportunity to open, waiting for reconciliation in your family, or simply waiting for peace in your mind. And in that waiting, you may wonder if God hears you at all. Hannah shows us that the silence of heaven is not the absence of God. He was listening to every prayer she prayed. He saw every tear she cried, and in His timing, He answered not just with a child, but with a son who would grow into a prophet, who shaped the destiny of a nation. God's answer to Hannah was bigger than she imagined, because it wasn't just about her pain, it was about His purpose. In the same way, the waiting seasons of your life are not wasted. They may feel empty, but God is often preparing something greater than you can see. Sometimes the answer will come in the way you ask. Other times it will come in a way you never expected. But either way, His response is filled with purpose. Hannah also teaches us about surrender. Her vow to dedicate Samuel shows that her prayer was not selfish. She wanted a child not just for herself, but to honor God. When we bring our desires before God and align them with His will, our pain becomes a pathway to purpose. Think about your own life. Where have you been praying without seeing results? Where have you felt the weight of silence? What if those very prayers are seeds planted in faith, waiting for the right season to bloom? Like Hannah, you may not see immediate change, but you can trust that God hears you and is working behind the scenes. The Apostle Paul once wrote, "In everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." He didn't say only pray when you see results. He said to pray in everything, because prayer is less about getting what we want and more about trusting the one who knows what we need. So let Hannah's story remind you, your prayers are not wasted. Your tears are not unnoticed. Your waiting is not in vain. God hears you even in your deepest pain, and He is faithful to respond in His perfect timing. Hannah's story closes with hope. What began with tears ended with joy, and what felt like silence turned into a testimony that has encouraged countless people through the ages. But notice this. Hannah's transformation started before she held Samuel in her arms. It began the moment she believed God had heard her. Her face was no longer downcast, not because her situation had changed, but because her heart had found peace in knowing that she was not forgotten. This is the same hope available to you today. Whatever you are waiting for, healing, provision, reconciliation, or direction, God has not turned away. He hears the cries you whisper when no one else is listening. He sees the tears you wipe away in secret. He knows the ache of your heart. And just as He remembered Hannah, He will remember you. But here's something important. You don't have to walk through this season of waiting alone. We are stronger when we share our struggles. Just as Hannah eventually shared her testimony with the world by dedicating Samuel to God, you can share your story too. When you open your heart, you not only release the burden, but also give others the courage to believe they are not alone. So I want to invite you to take a step of faith today. In the comments, write down one area where you feel like Hannah, one place in your life where you've even praying, waiting, or aching in silence. You may be surprised by how many others are walking through something similar. Your honesty could encourage someone else who is barely holding on. This is more than just a video. It's a community. And when you write, read, and respond to each other, you become part of a bigger story, one where God uses our shared struggles to bring shared encouragement. If Hannah's story reminded you that God hears even in your deepest pain, let this be your moment to believe it for yourself. And if this video encouraged you, please like it, subscribe for more, and share it with a friend who may need hope today. Because you never know, your simple share could be the reminder that someone else desperately needs. God hears you, God sees you, and just as He turned Hannah's tears into testimony, He can do the same in your life.